Hello, basketball people, we have news. Let's go to more news about the Golden State Warriors. I ask you to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel, as I am a Warriors fan. The Warriors' slowness and uncertainty have worried fans. Star Stephen Curry is showing signs of irritation and is already pressuring the Warriors front office to resolve the Jonathan Kuminga issue and request the signing of new players to build a strong roster to pursue Curry's fifth career title. Stephen Curry wants the Warriors to bring back Jonathan Kuminga and sign a few more players in free agency, such as Gary Payton II and Al Horford. Stephen Curry is pressuring the Warriors to sign players urgently, and this could cause an unexpected conflict between Curry and the Warriors front office. FL Game Recap for September 5, 2025. The Jonathan Kuminga free agency saga at the Golden State Warriors has now astonishingly dragged on for over 2 months, with potentially still some weeks to go given the October 1st deadline for the young forward to accept his $7.9 million qualifying offer. There's a real possibility that this situation goes right down to the final days before that deadline, but it's Warrior superstar Stephen Curry who may hold the key in forcing a long-awaited resolution that fans have been crying out for. Stephen Curry could force Warriors into a Jonathan Kuminga resolution. Golden State have exercised patience when it comes to the Kuminga situation this offseason, having turned down sign-and-trade offers from the Phoenix Suns and Sacramento Kings while most recently seemingly refusing to increase their current 2-year $45 million, second-year team option, offer. It's easy to hold patience and ask teammates and prospective free agents to hold patience when it's still the offseason. It's more difficult to do so once players and teams look to ramp up towards the start of the season, something that's on the horizon with training camp now less than a month away. According to Bleacher Report's Jake Fisher on Friday, there's a hope that the return of players, and specifically Curry and Jimmy Butler, to the team's training facility could increase some urgency on the Warriors working out the Kuminga situation. There's some hope that next week, over the weekend, is when players and teams will start to go back into their respective practice facilities that maybe Stephen Curry gets in the building and starts looking around. That Jimmy Butler gets in the building and starts looking around. And they're like, alright, we either want Jonathan Kuminga back or we've got to get some kind of resolution, Fisher said. Curry has always been patient when it comes to the Golden State front office and potential roster moves, having hardly been the kind of superstar that goes and demands certain things by certain times like many franchise players have done. Yet even he would have some level of frustration, particularly if he gets into the practice facility and only sees 8 other teammates who are on the main roster. Perhaps this is now the time for the 2X MVP to utilize his power within the organization by going and demanding that the front office either raises their contract offer to Kuminga, or becomes more tolerable to sign-and-trade offers from rival teams. As for Butler, he could do the same, but perhaps it means less coming from a player who's still fresh within the organization, particular in comparison to Curry as the franchise's greatest ever player coming into his 17th NBA season. The Kuminga situation finally meeting an end point is expected to bring a flurry of moves, with the Warriors still likely to sign Al Horford, DeAnthony Melton and Gary Payton II, among others, in free agency. Brandon Podziemski has to be careful in contract negotiations. If there's one thing to be learned though from Kuminga's restricted free agency, and that of Josh Giddey, Quentin Grimes, and Cam Thomas for that matter, it's not to get too greedy before the October extension deadline hits. The Warriors were able to get a deal done with Moses Moody, who agreed on a 3-year, $37.5 million extension, but not with Kuminga, who instantly entered free agency in the hope of a bigger contract in store. Instead, it's been the exact opposite for the 22-year-old who's seen his money and options dissipate rather quickly. The complete lack of salary cap room around the league has prevented Kuminga's ability to go out and get a significant offer sheet elsewhere, which would at least have put pressure on the Warriors. Then you have those teams willing to offer 3- or 4-year deals, the Sacramento Kings and Phoenix Suns, who've been shut down by Golden State because of the leverage they hold as part of the restricted free agency process. There were conflicting reports on just how much the Warriors were willing to give Kuminga before the October deadline. Even if the 5-year, $150 million offer was never forthcoming, we can safely assume it was at least somewhere near or over $100 million. Now Golden State are only presenting 1 year of guaranteed money, or more specifically a 2-year, $45 million deal with a second-year team option. It's such a dire situation that Kuminga could be willing to take the $7.9 million qualifying offer, something he'd have to decide on by October 1st. Let this be a lesson to Podziemski next offseason. It's probably better to lose a few million and get a deal done, than to haggle too much and have to enter an uncertain free agency market where the team still has a large element of control. At the very least, his agent would want to have a far better grasp on what the free agency landscape actually looks like as opposed to what we've seemingly seen with Kuminga's camp. Of course, there's still a whole season to play out before then, with Podziemski's next contract still largely to be determined by his impact for the Warriors on the floor. Warriors have edge over Lakers in trade possibilities. While the stunning Luka Doncic trade is the perfect example of why you'd never count the Lakers out from anything, the Warriors do look like they have the edge in being able to make a big mid-season move and subsequently rising further into contention. The issue for Los Angeles is the pieces they'd like to move on as mid-tier salaries in a trade. Gabe Vincent and Maxi Kleber hold little to no value whatsoever, according to Lakers insider Jovan Buha on a recent episode of his podcast. Both guys, Vincent and Kleber, depending on who you talk to, depending on who you survey, have somewhere between slightly negative to just negative value. I would not consider either one of these guys neutral to positive value players, in terms of their contract, even with being on an expiring, Buha said. Compare Vincent and Kleber to a pair of Warrior players making similar money, Moses Moody and Buddy Hield, and the value is starkly different. That's not to say that they have a ton of value within themselves, but they would hold a lot more interest than the Lakers duo. Hield had an up-and-down first year with Golden State but ended on a high during the playoffs, dropping 9 threes and 33 points in Game 7 of the first-round series against the Houston Rockets. Moody conversely struggled due to injury in the playoffs, but is still an improving young player who was a starter on a dominant team to end the regular season after the All-Star break. At the end of the day, both sets of players will need to have draft capital alongside them in order to make a major deal. Here's where the Warriors also have an advantage, albeit it's far from a terrible situation from a Lakers perspective. The addition of Doncic suddenly gives the Lakers a much brighter future, preserving them from a sudden decline in the post-LeBron James years. However, the downside to that is their future picks no longer hold the same value when rival teams know the Lakers should always be competitive so long as Doncic is running the show. On the other hand, Golden State are still very much led by a trio of veterans in Stephen Curry, Jimmy Butler, and Draymond Green. That makes their future picks far more valuable, potentially incentivizing teams should the Warriors wish to make a win-now move. There's of course plenty of other aspects involved in trade negotiations, but on the surface there's no reason why Golden State should be outbid by their Pacific rival in any deal. That in itself might make them more of a contending possibility next season, even if the Lakers would counter by arguing they're far better set up for the future. It's not even training camp, but Warriors rookie is already on thin ice. Another thing the Warriors need to figure out, if they haven't already. Alex Tui was the Golden State Warriors' first pick in the 2025 draft, as he heard his name called, technically by the Suns, with the number 52 pick. The Australian forward previously played for the Sydney Kings, the same team Andrew Bogut played for before the Warriors signed him in 2019. Bogut has praised Tui, but that might not be enough for Golden State's top pick. NBA insider Jake Fisher recently mentioned potential Warriors signees, subscription required, including Will Richard, the number 56 pick in the draft. He notably left Tui's name out, leading fans to believe that Tui could spend at least one more season playing in the Australian NBL. At best, Tui could sign a two-way contract, spending the bulk of his time with the Santa Cruz Warriors. Fisher omitting Tui isn't surprising, especially after how he looked at Summer League. The pace was too much for the 21-year-old to keep up with, and it wasn't a real NBA game. He knows that he needs to work on his conditioning. Tui told ESPN that he wants to make sure he nails being in the best shape he can be before he gets over there. Alex Tui could be a draft and stash pick for the Warriors. He's still a ways away from cracking Steve Kerr's rotation, but again, he was a second-round pick. It's not like Golden State drafted him hoping he'd be a rotation player on opening night. The Warriors aren't in rebuild mode, but are trying to win a championship. Tui is eager to learn from his new teammates, but it's unclear if that'll happen next season. One of the best parts about being a young player on a team like the Warriors is that you can learn from some of the best players to ever play in the NBA. Not every rookie gets to absorb wisdom from Steph Curry. His rookie season might have to wait until the 2026-27 season at the earliest, meaning that the next time Tui could wear a Golden State jersey will be in Summer League next year. If that ends up being the case, Warriors fans will need to keep an eye on his development in Sydney. Tui now has greater motivation, knowing that one of the best organizations in the league believes in him. As with every other young player, 21 might not necessarily be young for the NBA, but he's still young. His continued development will be key. Draymond Green reacts to Warriors owner Joe Lacob facing backlash. The Golden State Valkyries are preparing for a landmark moment. On Thursday, the franchise clinched its first ever WNBA playoff appearance, but instead of the opener taking place at Chase Center, it will be played at SAP Center in San Jose. The relocation stems from a scheduling conflict, as Chase Center will be unavailable while the arena prepares for the Laver Cup tennis tournament scheduled for September 19 to 21. CBS reported that the tournament was booked back in 2023, well before Chase Center began hosting a WNBA franchise. The situation has sparked backlash for Warriors and Valkyries owner Joe Lacob, who has otherwise been widely praised for bringing the league to the Bay Area and spending $50 million on the expansion franchise. Fans were eager to see the Valkyries host their first postseason game in the same arena as the Warriors, and disappointment quickly turned into criticism when it became clear that the debut playoff appearance would be moved. Here were just a few of the comments. Joe Lacob, a tennis tournament? Move them what the, expletive, read one post on X. Joe Lacob you suck, said another fan. First ever home playoff game and gets moved you Joe Lacob's first fumble with GSV, one added. Any other league the team gets favored over the act and the act is forced to reschedule. This is so gross by the Valkyrie ownership group, said another. Do better Joe Lacob.